Hello, Peekers. Welcome back. I'm Miranda.
And I'm Mackenzie, and this is your one-stop shop for storytelling
He's spilling.
and to keep up with all the latest book talk drama that you have been missing out on. Slay.
Slay, period, exclamation point, apostrophe, comma, period.
Period.
Do you have any life updates?
No, not really. My voice, if you guys hear me
Excellent.
sounding a little disgusting today, my voice is just doing this cute thing where it just goes away sometimes. So,
You sound so raspy.
I'm trying to give sultry and,
Oh.
very, we're starting a new book. So new vibe. It's a very
Yeah.
different vibe. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely bringing new vibes. So that's good. Very on par, very on theme. We love that.
Thank you.
My only life update is we had a very fun Barbie party in Chicago this past weekend. It was so much fun. Our friends here just started this new little dance club thing, and it was a huge success. Our friend was DJing, and he was organizing all this, and then his partner, she really marketed the heck out of all of it, and we had a huge turnout. It was so much fun, and 10 out of 10 would recommend anybody to do it. If anybody's curious, they also have a podcast. It's called Fun with Sex Podcast, and they're very open-minded, very cool group of people, and I think that everybody just, if you're open-minded like that, just give them a little listen on their podcast.
I love the TikToks they post about their little different facts, fun things and stuff. It's very eye-opening. It's very progressive. It's very just informative and fun. I love their stuff too.
Yeah, that's what I really like about it. It's just the awareness that they're bringing to just all parts of life. So if you guys are interested, feel free to give them a listen. But without further ado, today we are going to be covering Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fire, chapters 1 through 10. But first, we do want to give that little disclaimer that we are going to be retelling the story that happens, which means you will be hearing everything that has happened up to and through these chapters. So if you have not read these parts and you do not want spoilers, you have been warned. And before we get started, let's do a quick recap of everything that's happened so far. Celaena is a notorious assassin who became the king's personal champion to do his dirty work, was sent to Wendlyn with the expectations to infiltrate their naval base and kill the royal family by the time of their midsummer ball, when the king will be bringing his new army and new creations to conquer their land. This plan was thanks to Chaol, captain of the royal guard and ex-lover, after he found out that Celaena was part Fae. To get support of this plan, Chaol promised his father that he'd return to Anile to reclaim his title because he's starting to see he can't truly serve the king anymore. Chaol also learned that Celaena is actually the lost heir of Terrasen, Aelin Ashriver Galathinius. Dorian, the king's son and heir to his throne, has been developing magical powers that he is still learning himself. And for a slightly logical reason that I don't completely agree with, everyone feels the need to keep Dorian in the dark about Celaena being Aelin and his dad being evil. Did I miss anything?
No, the only thing I guess I'll touch on is I still think as much as everyone loves Dorian, he is his father's son and, will eventually be king of Aderlin at some point. And so as much as everyone loves and trusts him, I feel like letting him know that his kind of love interest, good friend is his potential biggest rival to overthrowing his kingdom, and that his father also destroyed her entire kingdom could just be a little hairy, if you will.
Yeah. No, see, I get why they are not telling him, but also I'm like, he's pretty chill, right?
He's pretty
we can
cool.
assess the vibes, okay? All right, so we are going to be picking up where Celaena has arrived to Wendlyn. She scouted the royal castle and found her distant cousin, Galen Ashriver. He's got those famous Ashriver eyes, and he turns out to be the leader of the city blockade. She's figured out times that she could make this hit, but she can't pull herself to do it because she can tell the people love and trust Galen to protect and serve them, which makes her feel like an even bigger piece of shit being sent here to kill yet another person who would actually be able to lead an honest rebellion against the king. So Celaena has been hiding out, getting wine drunk to pass the time as she debates what she should do. And that's so relatable at the end of the day, isn't it? Just getting under the influence just to pass some time and ponder about life choices.
I love that. I also think it's a cute little sign of deteriorating mental health. And it maybe is unfortunate that that's relatable to us, but nonetheless, relatable. I feel you, girl. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? You're in kind of a pickle.
You are in a pickle, so just get drunk and figure it out.
Not real life
it's a
advice.
Great process.
That's not our life advice. Not
Or
for
is
real. Just potentially how we cope sometimes. You know.
It might not be the advice that we would give, but it is the steps that we do take.
Sometimes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes. Anyways, so after she gets mistaken as a homeless person by another homeless person, we meet our very first new character, Rowan. And let me give you guys my very first impressions of Rowan. He's obviously a fae. He's big, scary, giving warrior-esque vibes, very serious and stoic. But in Celaena's POV, she really notices his long silver hair and a tattoo on the side of his face that looks like it's trailing beyond the collar of his shirt, which is tea, because this is making me feel like this is a first bite of a possible new love interest.
Yeah, that's what I thought at first glance too. And then as we'll get into the story, he is so grumpy. He is so mean. He's like the most grumpy, but he's very attractive from description.
Yeah. I was like, that's the main reason why I'm feeling that, because I feel like anytime I see a character notice something attractive about another character, I'm like, they're in love.
Like,
they're going to be in love.
They're going to get married. Knew it.
I'm always like, they're mates, or they're going to get married, or they're going to have babies. One of those three.
That's your hopeless romantic side.
It is. I just love love. What can I say?
Love.
Well, we learned that Rowan has face senses, so he can smell Celaena's blood, and he knows who she really is immediately, that she's Aedion. He walks up to her. They have this silent understanding of why he's here, because Wendlyn is just the mortal part of this realm. So Rowan, being Fae, is here to lead her to the immortal lands of Old Queen Maeve. And remember, she was one of the 3 original queens alive during the war against the Vaug. They stop at this halfway point, which is like this fort-type base, and it separates the mortal and the immortal realms. And we learn that a lot of demi-fae actually occupied this area because socially, demi-fae are considered less than high faes, and mortals have distrust in faes for previously keeping them as human slaves.
That'll do it every time. The slaves, it's going to cause some issues, guys. I don't know why people keep doing that, really.
Yeah, you really got to stop with the slavery here. It's not cool.
Not the vibe.
It's not the vibe. It's come on. Well, I don't know what year it is there, but it's 2024 here, so come on. But yeah, so they get there. We meet Queen Maeve. Here's my first impression of her. She seems equally as terrifying as the king, and she seems to have boomer mentality when it comes to her prejudice against the mortals and the half-breeds. So I can't tell if she's evil or not, but I do have weird vibes about her right now, so I'm going to keep my eyes on her.
I also couldn't tell when I was reading this. She gives very scary, ominous, maybe a little bit manipulative vibes, but also we just don't know because the king is so disgusting. Like, he's so out and about evil. We just don't know how these characters are going to come into play yet. But she isn't giving initial good vibes.
Yeah, but the T2 with that is because the reason why I can't immediately jump is because isn't Celaena partially related to Maeve in some sense, because her great grandmother was one of her sisters, so she's like a distant aunt or something like that.
Distant aunt.
They are related,
but like thousands of years. So
yeah, so not that close.
Not like let's come home for Christmas.
Well, Queen Maeve essentially tells Celaena that she didn't come help during the attacks 10 years ago because she doesn't like being lied to, like Celaena's mother did when she hid Celaena from her. And we don't really know why she was hidden from Maeve, but it's clear that Celaena's family did not trust Maeve for some reason or another. So Celaena is trying to ignore Maeve's attitude, play nice because she knows that Maeve was one of the original Fae Queens that was there during the war over the word keys. So she's like, you should know hypothetically where they're at. But Queen Maeve wants to be annoying, so she tells Celaena, I know that you have the power of fire, and I want you to learn how to be the master of this power so you can become what you're meant to be, a queen. So when you're deemed worthy enough by Rowan here, you can enter my kingdom and we can talk about these word keys.
Why do I feel like she's going to pull some like bullshit like, I don't know anything about them. Talked about it.
That is the vibe. Give her something that she can trust you for.
And like, what's her motive? Trying to get her to learn her fire or like master her magical abilities. You know what I mean? Like, how does that benefit her at all? You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Yeah. Well, that's also why I'm like, I can't tell if she's good or bad, because maybe she truly wants Celaena to become a queen and she wants to help her somehow. So maybe that's like the reasoning.
It could definitely go either way for sure, but suspicious vibes.
Well, anyway, so her and Rowan end up going off to show her her new room, which is essentially like a step above a prison cell. Rowan is not friendly to Celaena, and Celaena seems to be very self-destructive in this moment, and she's intentionally saying things to trigger him and get a rise out of him. At one point, they're walking to the room, and she says some really mean and nasty things to him, and then, trigger warning, he punches her straight in the face. And I had to read that twice whenever I went over that, because I was like, whoa, what just happened? Did he just punched her in the face after she just said something mean to him? Interesting. And then to make it even more shocking, she has the mindset of Grave, where she's like, I am about to fight this guy and I'm going to take him down. She's thinking that about this like huge Fae warrior. She's like, I'm going to fight him and I'm going to bring him down. Okay. Go off, queen.
Small human girl and 500-year-old warrior Fae. I mean, give it your best shot, girlfriend, but I don't know.
We love confidence.
Don't know how that's going to go down.
But it is giving Grave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I wanted to talk about some interesting notes, because this is all obviously chapters 1 through 10. So we're just meeting a lot of new people. So I do want to talk about some interesting notes that I have with these characters before we move back to our side characters. When Celaena and Rowan met, they were traveling through the woods to get to this halfway point. And when they were traveling, they had a camp overnight. And it seems like little critters or little fairies are noticing her arrival. And this isn't the first critter spotting we've had. So I want to know who these little guys are and if they become a bigger piece to her story.
So I won't say anything about them in the future. So quit asking questions about the future. But if you remember back in Throne of Glass, like right when Dorian picked up Celaena and took her from Endovier like to the castle to start the games, the challenges, remember on the way they were sleeping, and whenever she woke up, all around her was like covered in little flowers and stuff like that. And in the book, she said something like, it must have been the little folk or something like that. So even then, the little folk were recognizing her and knew her for who she was, the rightful queen of Terrasen. So it's coming full circle. That's a little like foreshadowing moment that we just didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. I just love hearing about these little guys. I just want to know what they look like, what they are here for, and I just feel like they've been with her from the beginning of these stories, so I want to know why, because I feel like they're going to be a bigger part. So
I just feel like they're so cute, probably.
I know, the little folk. How can you not be cute with that kind of name? The little guys.
So small, so precious.
And then we learn that all Fae have an animal form. So Celaena's animal form is human. But what I want to also recap also is she is not full Fae. So she is only half Fae, like a demi-Fae essentially. So she has magic. She's not 100% Fae. Being who she is right now as a human is her animal form, which I find is kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variations of Fae and like half Fae, lesser Fae, whatever, however they call it in the book. But some Fae don't have that other form. Some Fae just don't, because they, their bloodline is so diluted, or, they have so little Fae in them. They just inherit like some very small little magical powers or stuff like that. But the ones that have a lot more Fae in them are the ones that kind of develop those like cooler gifts or those, ability to transfer into one form or another.
And then on another note with Rowan, apparently he looks like he's in his 20s, but since he's likely going to be our new Fae daddy, we can assume that he's going to be at least 500 years old. He's been around for a while probably, right?
Yeah, he's real old. Real old.
Old guy.
He even tells Celaena at one point, because she was like, should I call you cousin or something? Just being like really facetious. And he was like, you're literally probably more related to your friends back in Aderlin than you are to me. So, like, they're so far, like, spread out in generations and whatever. It's like, it's very lightly related. It'd be like if we met one of our ancestors 1,000 years ago or whatever and be like, we're family. Like, I mean, kind of, but not really.
Not really. Like, I don't really know you
Yeah.
like that. And then lastly, I wanted to review a little bit of lineage. So we already said a little bit that Celaena's great-grandma is Queen Mab, which is one of Maeve's sisters, one of the 3 original Fae queens. And Queen Mab was in love with this human prince, so she tied herself to him and became human herself. And I believe before she did that, her gift had something to do with water, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that Celaena's Fae heritage comes from Mab.
It does. It started originally with her, and then I don't remember if Mab's son is Brannon, but Brannon and Elena were the first king and queen of Aderlin, and Elena was Fae, and Brannon had the power of fire. So that's where she gets her fire from, but she also descended from Mab. So she could potentially have that water in her, but it never talks anything about that with her.
Yeah, it's mostly fire. Okay. And then back across the scene, let's check into baby Chaol real quick. He, poor thing, is not doing great. Our boy's conflicted. He's still madly in love with Celaena, but he's also equally terrified of her. And he's conflicted because he can see her as a lover, an enemy, and a true queen.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be so hard because as much as I shit on Chaol, I do think he is doing everything with her best interest in mind, though maybe a little bit misguided or misogynistic at some points. And I do think that if nothing else, he loves her more than anything. And I think in his head he knows or is very, very confident that if she comes back, like their future is so uncertain and he probably will never get her back. But you know, the future is an open book. We really never know.
It is. No one really ever knows until it happens. And then Chaol and Dorian are still at odds after he surprised Dorian with this plan to send Celaena away. And because, again, for some reason, they all want to keep Dorian in the dark about things, Chaol has been giving Dorian essentially like the middle finger. He acknowledges Dorian's powers, but he told him he doesn't want to know anything about it. So Dorian is getting major fuck you vibes for seemingly no reason, and it's making him want to distance himself from Chaol, which I feel like I'd be in the same exact boat. Like if somebody was doing that, they're like, oh yeah, this huge change. Don't tell me anything about it. And also, I'm not going to talk to you about why I sent your little girlfriend away or keep you in the loop of any other secrets we just figured out.
I literally feel so bad for Dorian at this point because he's lost his love interest to Chaol first, and then now she's just gone, even when they were like agreeing to be friends. And he really like didn't have many other people to trust. He was kind of friends with Nehemiah, and Nehemiah was telling him about, you know, he's going to come into this power, and then he low-key did, and then Nehemiah died. And now Chaol, his best friend in the entire world, is being a little bitch about his powers. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me why Chaol is being so like adverse to even just being his friend and hearing him out. Dorian doesn't seem like he wants these powers. He's not trying to use them willy-nilly. Like, at least be his friend and be like, what can I do to support you? Are you okay? And Chaol just makes me want to hit him.
Because this is a long story short. This is what Chaol is doing. But on the other end, Chaol also is like, I can't know anything because if the king finds out that there's something going on with Dorian or Celaena, he's going to come to me and I can't be able to, like, I don't want to be put in that position to lie and, like, either throw one of them under the bus or me get in trouble or he's like under a lot of stress of how to handle the situation. But at the end of the day, they're keeping him in the dark and it's making his friendships get strained.
Yeah, I mean, and also, like, I get that side too, but at some point, you're going to have to pick a side, my guy, and by not picking, you're choosing the king right now, so that's my hot take.
I love it, and I agree with it. And then another family member, so another new character is introduced, and they come to the glass castle. His name is Aedion Ashriver, and he is another cousin of Celaena. And he was brought up in Terrasen, but since Aderlin's conquering, he has now become one of the most infamous generals of the north. And from Chaol's POV, we learned that Aedion is actually like the male version of Celaena, like physically and personality wise, everything that Celaena is in a male version. So he is low-key worried that Celaena's cover is going to be blown by the king seeing Aedion so up close.
Yeah, well, and in the way that he's described, it sounds like they are like tit for tat, so similar. Like they both have very fiery personalities. They both have that like very silvery blonde hair. They both have those turquoise eyes rimmed in gold. I mean, come on. Celaena is kind of lucky that she was sent away because if people would have seen them side by side standing together,
it would have been so obvious.
That would have been tea. Yeah. I don't know that it could have been hidden at that point.
And Chaol is not a fan of Aedion just because he doesn't know where he truly lies. Like, is he truly for or secretly against the king? Because if Celaena were here and she was seeing what Aedion has been doing for the king, like killing these rebels in Terrasen, aka their people, and helping him conquer the world, it probably wouldn't end very well. And then another red flag with Aedion's arrival is we saw another black ring gifted from the king on his finger.
Oh, that's so horrifying. I feel like it calls into question, though. Like, we don't know exactly what these black rings do other than it signifies some kind of allegiance or correlation to the king. But we also know that Cain was heavily influenced by this black ring in some way or another. You know, like he was getting stronger. He was opening portals, summoning the Rider X. He was obviously highly working for the king's bidding, whether that was his choice or not. So, I mean, it could call into question, like, if Aedion is doing all these things because he's wearing a black ring, like, could it be influencing him somehow? But we don't know yet.
And Aedion has been brought down here because the king is getting ready for another war. So he wants Aedion to bring his Bane down here so that way they can all get ready, train together, and go with the king to conquer Wendlyn. Aedion arrives first before his Bane. So the king orders him to hang out with Dorian to occupy their time while they're waiting. And Dorian is also not a fan of Aedion. So he's always been kind of an asshole to him as well. And so with that being said, it's not surprising when Aedion pushes Dorian in the rosebush for no reasons. And Dorian gets cut up enough that he needs to go see a healer and get stitched up. And while he's getting stitched up, he ends up seeing Sorcha, who has previously helped them before, like the night when Chaol, Dorian, and Celaena all had to fight that monster in the basement with Archer and like Fleetfoot and everything. But they never really caught her name. So being here with her now, he's kind of like beating around the bush, trying to be like, hey, do you remember us? Like, do you remember that night? And she's like, don't worry, we didn't document that. Sometimes we just forget to do that sometimes, which I feel like is tea because also in between all this, like they're kind of giving like low-key like flirty vibes. They're both like, I don't know, what are you doing? And like, who are you again? And so I feel like that's tea. She's like, don't worry, baby, I got you.
Yeah, she also like is described as like as soon as she sees Dorian, she gets like very flushed. She's like, oh God, he's so cute. He's so beautiful. Like kind of fangirling a little bit. It's kind of sad. She's like, I know like he doesn't even remember my name. She was like, I know he's kind of a player around the castle. I know like I'm lowly help or whatever. And she's like, but she was like, just being around him just gives me like the little butterflies, which I think is so cute. And
yeah.
It could be like a cute little story, but
yeah.
Also going back just a teeny bit, just for clarification, if anybody hasn't read the books, when we were talking about Aedion's Bane, that is a group of warriors basically that they all reside in Terrasen and they're Terrasen's kind of legion forces and Aedion is running them. But since Aderlyn has conquered Terrasen, the Bane is technically, it's Terrasen's Bane, but they're working for the king. Yeah.
Right.
So when we say the Bane, it's like his group of warriors, fighters from Terrasen, but they're working for the king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then because of Aedion's reputation of being a troublemaker, like getting into fights and speaking his minds, doing things his own way, Chaol is fixated on finding leverage to use against him so he doesn't cause a ruckus amongst his men. So long story short, Chaol begins stalking Aedion to figure out if he is truly acting in his own involution. Is that the right word? Involution?
If he's acting of his own volition.
Yeah, and if he's acting of his own volition or if he truly is being swayed some way or another by these black rings.
That was really close. You almost had it. I knew what you were trying
I'm
to
working
say.
on my vocabulary, so.
Phonics with Miranda on Black Beak.
Okay, and now let's introduce our last new character of the week. Her name is Manon, but I will often be calling her Manon because it's me. And she is the heir of the Black Beak Witch clan, aka one of the Iron Teeth Witches. But unlike what we've learned about the Iron Teeth Witches resembling the ugly demon half, we learned that she's as beautiful as a high fae.
Yeah. So, like, we'll learn a lot more about witches over the next few books, but there are some witches that they look a little scary. But most of the witches we're going to be talking about in this like upcoming book or two are going to be very, very beautiful. But when we say very strikingly beautiful, don't get us wrong. They are also horrifying. They have like very long, very long, like iron tipped like claws, and they have like sharp, jagged teeth whenever they want their teeth to come down like their iron teeth. And they may be beautiful, but it's almost like how I would describe like a siren, you know, like the legends of sirens in the sea and stuff. Like, so beautiful. They can like, you know, sway you to like come to them and stuff like that. And then they will fuck you up. So
yeah. No, I think a siren is a really good way to describe them because they can present in a beautiful manner, but the moment that they're ready to fuck things up, they become the scariest thing you've ever seen. And they mean business when they do that.
I kind of love that for them, honestly.
Yeah, I'm always here for a bad bitch, so I'm here for Manon so far, and the Iron Teeth Witches. So, Manon's grandma, you know what? Yeah, we're just gonna, who am I kidding? Okay, so Manon's grandma is the matriarch of the Black Beak Witch clan, and Manon is essentially the general to her army, but also has her own elite force, or elite employees, if you will. She has a group of 13 Black Beak Witches, creatively named the 13. And this is essentially the super squad of the Black Beak Witch clan. They're the most dangerous and deadly of these witches, and we learn why Manon is their leader when we first meet her in Fin Arrow. She's in a little farmer's village pretending to be a Crocran witch, which, as we remember, is the Iron Teeth's mortal enemy. And she wears their infamous red cloak around and hopes to weed out the other Crocran witches and kill them, as it seems to be the Iron Teeth's main life mission.
Yeah, we'll get into that more. I'm also pretty sure it's Crocan, but that's okay.
Yeah. Crocran.
Yeah. Crocran. Crocan.
Crocan. That's just, we're going to have to go with it, okay, guys? Just go with it. And if you want to correct me, then comment on our social media posts. So that way we know that you're listening. Otherwise, I will not change the way that I'm saying things. But while she's here presenting as a witch at all, this causes the mortals in Fin Arrow to get a little spooked. So this gives them the excuse for violence because they had a witch in their midst, and they decide to pitchfork her out of town. But while they're winding up for a fight, Manon is methodically planning how she's going to rip each of their throats out and enjoy it. A true killer. And apparently it's in the Iron Teeth Witch's natures to be a ruthless, heartless predator. So Manon is ready for this party to get going. She's not been able to kill anybody in months, so she is ready. She surprises her first kill by trapping him in her room and using her iron claws to rip into his stomach, while her iron teeth tore out his throat. Same thing with the second farmer. She ripped his throat out. But the third, she let him run. She gave him 10 seconds just to make it a little bit more fun to catch. And this was my very first impression of her after reading all of this. I feel like she is what I imagine many people imagine Celaena Sardothian is like before they meet her. Like this ruthless huntress killer who just loves to kill.
Yeah, no, I think your first impression is pretty spot on. When we learned about Celaena and Sam and the Assassin's Blades and stuff, they have more of like a moral code, a moral compass, you know, like with this freeing the slaves and, you know, their affection for each other and stuff. But as we'll come to learn, like the code and the driving factors for the witches, they don't really have much allegiance to anyone but themselves and their base desires. So they're a special kind of scary.
So after this bust of trying to kill a Crocran witch, Manon returns back to the base with her grandmother and the other Black Beak witches. And this is where we learn that the king has summoned all of these Iron Teeth witches to Farron's Gap to meet these wyverns.
Wyverns.
Is that right? to meet these wyverns he's been creating and agree to be part of his aerial cavalry. And that's a no-brainer for these Iron Teeth witches, because the T for them is they used to fly on these cliche brooms before magic vanished, so they have not been able to be in the air since it's been gone. So this is like the opportunity of a lifetime for them.
Yeah, and let's be real. Let's get this real. When they're talking about it, they're wholeheartedly doing this for themselves. They are like, you know what? We want to go back and reclaim our lands, which we'll talk more about that in the next episode. They lost their homelands. We want to be able to fly again. We really don't give a fuck about the king's mission, but he's basically saying we can keep these wyverns after we fight for him. And we also get to kill people while we're doing it. So they were like, really, this feels like a win-win. And they were like, who cares what the king wants? They were like, we don't really care to do anything, but we're not serving him. We're getting the wyverns.
Yeah. They're like, we'll do this to meet an end. And once we get our wyverns back, we are back in the game to get our home back. So
back in business, baby.
And do you have any other last little pointers that you wanted to clarify on before we end up this story time?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing I'll say is this episode probably felt a little chaotic because we introduced so many new characters. And truth be told, when you're reading this book for the first time, as chaotic as this episode may have felt, the first part of the book also felt like that. It's truly every chapter is a different POV. And so you're getting all these new characters, all these new POVs. They're not all connected, but it's kind of like, it's going to end up being like one of those like Christmas story specials, you know, where like there's all these different POVs. And then eventually near the end of the movie, you find out how they're all like kind of connected and stuff. So they all do connect in some way or another to the plot of the story. So power through, listen on. We were very confused as well. Just throwing it out there.
You guys know me. I'm barely able to read these names, so just imagine how I am getting through these stories.
You're doing so great, though.
Ooh. All right, well, that is the end of this story time. I hope you guys enjoyed this introduction of Heir of Fire. And then don't forget that we have our emails open for the Bookish Battle submissions. If you know any crazy stories that happened to you or someone you know, write it in as a little short story. We want to start a new segment called Micro Peaks, where we just have fun conversations based off of the stories we get in. And we're going to call that like our little filler episodes too, so that way we can start doing like 2 episodes a week for you guys. And once we get maybe like 10 submissions, we will start reading them and get the show going.
And we say it every time, but your story is really almost guaranteed to be read on the podcast. You know, we're not drowning in stories at this point in time. So, and don't forget, on the last episode as well, we did offer $10 Venmo, Cash App.
Yeah,
if your story helps us go viral. So that's a big prize. I know. I'm just saying, give us something good, baby. plotpeakgirlies@gmail.com is where you can submit those stories. And if you're interested in it, please follow us on TikTok and Instagram at plot.peak. And that is the end of this week's plot.
Yeah, and then next week, come back as we take a peek at Sarah J. Maas's Heir of Fires, chapters 11 through 19.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. Bye.